Okay, at 6 p.m., I'm opening the Board of Trustees, the Mountain View Westman School District regular meeting to order. This is the October 2nd regular meeting. Before I ask for roll call to order, I'd like to state that board member Lisa Henry will be attending the October 2nd, 2025 regular board meeting remotely via an audio and video platform from the Marriott Grand Residence Club, 1001 Heavenly Village Way, South Lake Tahoe, California, 96150. The public has access to this location and can make public comments from this location. Okay, call to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and the roll call, please.
Devin Conley,
Anna Reed,
Charles DeFazio.
And Bill Lambert. 4 trustees are present, and Trustee Henry is participating remotely. Can I have, is anyone, next is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any questions concerning the agenda? Are any public comments on the agenda? I do not see any. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion by Trustee Conley and a second by Trustee DeFazio to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And no, I didn't see Trustee Henry on there.
She is working on getting on right now.
Yeah, okay. Well, we have at least a majority of the board approves the agenda. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 2, school showcase by Graham Middle School.
Hello, board members, district administrators.
You have to turn it on.
Hello, board members, district administrators, Graham representatives, and community members. I'm Stephen, a Graham 8th grader and GMS TV representative.
I'm Devin, another 8th grade member of GMS TV.
and I'm Min Young, another 8th grade member of GMS TV. GMS TV, or Graham Middle School Television, is Graham's official news station. At GMS TV, our mission is to inform, inspire, and empower the Graham Middle School community through student-led broadcasts and creative storytelling.
We strive to deliver engaging morning announcements while developing skills in filmmaking, photo editing, and digital media production. Through collaboration, innovation, and hands-on learning, GMS TV aims to build confident communicators and future-ready creators.
Today, our showcase has been fully produced by GMS TV's most experienced and self-selected students, Yodas, including us, with basic guidance from staff, telling us, we'll leave it up to you.
Anyways, Yoda's interviewed, researched, and edited our showcase down to the finest detail to convey all the positive experience in programs that could happen at Graham.
On behalf of GMS TV and Graham, we would like to thank you for the opportunity to show our amazing campus and programs.
And now we're excited to present Graham Middle School.
Hi, Mr. Van Dam here. And after school athletics. So after school athletics is one of the essential elements where I belong. They provide a space for people to come in and be a part of a team. They're able to create new friends and friendships, and they're going to find people that also have similar likes as them as well. So we have a lot of sports here, so I belong to be a part of a team here at Graham, and go Bears!
Pursue knowledge is one of Graham's essential elements, arguably the most important of all, fostering a learning mindset in students and a positive learning experience. At Graham, we pursue knowledge in the library, clubs, and many other places. This helps students academically achieve more and succeed later in life as well.
Hi there, my name is Derek Mulkey, and I help mentor the Math Olympiad Club at Graham Middle School. Students come in to the classroom on Wednesdays afternoon and are kind of led by some high school students from Mountain View High School to try different interesting math concepts, to learn new ways of looking at the world, to think of different ways to talk about numbers. It's a very interesting club. You also get to participate in some national competitions for mathematics, including the AMC 8 and 10, or AMC 8 here, sorry. And it's a great way to pursue knowledge and kind of deepen your understanding of mathematics and the world in general. I hope to see people there.
Well, to me, the Graham Library helps to pursue knowledge with a vast variety of fiction and nonfiction books that we have for the students, for their reading pleasure, for independent reading books, and also to gather some more information, particularly on nonfiction topics. There's been a boon of new books the last 20 years in nonfiction that students have really enjoyed. As you can see or hear, we've got a lot of students in the library right now, checking out books, working and collaborating together, using the resources that we have in the library, in addition to doing school projects and work together.
Hi, my name is Jenny Gatterland, and I teach choir here at Graham Middle School, and I also direct our school's annual musical. When you step into a rehearsal for a school musical, you are doing more than just learning lines and singing songs. Cast members learn to trust one another, whether it's hitting a specific dance move, or really nailing that harmony, or simply being there to encourage each other. So when we talk about the value of school musicals, we're not just talking about songs or costumes or opening nights. We're talking about building a community. Friendships formed during a show last long after the show closes. They learn to support one another, solve problems together, and celebrate each other's successes. One costume, one opening night at a time. Together we can.
So we cooperate with each other, we collaborate in the spirit of competition.
We always have our fun moments because obviously it's a team after all.
We call it cooperation. The robotics team was formed back in 2006 by one of the science teachers, Mrs. Mitchell.
My name is Omar Ansari. I'm from robotics. I'm in the varsity team.
Our focus was teamwork. So here, as you can see in the poster, it says, discover the spirit of friendly competition.
I think robotics is a very fun team.
We're not mean to each other. We speak nicely to one another. And most of all, we have fun playing together while we learn.
Graham's fourth essential element is to do no harm. This means that no kinds of violence are tolerated here. As a result of this element, the social atmosphere here is relaxed. Our students feel safe at Graham with the help of staff and other students following this rule.
How have the staff and students at Graham helped you feel safer?
The staff are really welcoming and nice, I guess. They tell me I can ask them anything. And my friends are nice.
As you can see, our students feel comfortable with the community here at Graham. Although this is just one student interview, almost all Graham students feel the same way. The majority of us have at least one staff member on campus who we can go to when we don't feel safe. While this was still very common before the 2024 to 2025 school year began, it became even more common as our new staff board has reinforced the school rules, making it even more of a safe space than it was before.
Since Graham got a new staff board, do you feel that the do no harm has become more or less important on campus?
I do think it has become more important. It's reduced, and there's definitely no violence on campus anymore.
Another factor contributing to the success of the do no harm element at Graham is our policies for when a student decides to mistreat somebody else. When students do harm to a staff member or student, they get a few warnings. The first one is usually verbal, then the second one would be contact home. If a student is giving too many warnings and still hasn't fixed their behavior, they might get a referral or in harsh cases, even get suspended. Overall, Graham's essential element of do no harm creates a safe and open environment for all of our students.
Hi, at Graham Middle School, we have a special program called our Block G program. In it, students are recognized for 3 different types of areas: our academics, our attendance, and student activities that they are involved in. The first time students earn the award, they get the Block G, and then after that, they can earn different colored pins to put on their G. The gold pins are for academics, the silver pins are for attendance, and the bronze pins are for activities. This is a way that our students can take pride in Graham and show all of the things that they are involved in.
So that concludes your presentation? Okay, great. Any of the trustees like to make any comments?
I'd
Trustee
just like
Conley?
to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I see students, parents, staff members. We really appreciate the time and effort you put in to be here, and it was great to see the video that was student directed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for coming out. This is always a great thing to have, the school representation. So thank you for the students, the hard work you did putting all this together. And thank your colleagues too, who helped you out. Okay. Okay, we are going to take a short, let's say 10-minute break before we move on to the rest of the board meeting. Right, unless you guys want to stay. returning from a short break at 6:22 p.m. Next item is number 3, opportunity for members of the public to address the board concerning items on the closed session agenda. Is there anyone in person who would like to speak on the closed session agenda items? I don't see any. Is there anyone online who would like to speak on the closed session agenda items? I do not see anyone, in which case we will close open session and move to closed session at 6:22. Okay, at 7:24 PM, we are reconvening open session. There is no reportable action taken during this closed session. However, I would like to have a statement that should have been reported out a while ago. At the August 21st, 2025 board meeting, the board approved 2 settlement agreements with regard to 2 then pending special education due process complaints. Both agreements were approved by a vote of 5-0. The agreement in OAH case number 2025-070851 has a maximum cost to the district of $35,500. And the agreement in OAH case number 2025-050980 has a maximum cost to the district of $38,350. Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions about the items on the consent agenda? Don't see any. We will move on to ask for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on the consent agenda items? See one person. Is there anyone online who would like to speak on the consent agenda items? I do not see anyone online. Okay, Mr. Nelson, may go ahead.
Yes, this is about consent item H, about personnel, the action you're going to take. Even though this item is called personnel report, you're actually taking an action on it by voting for these positions that are being, people are being hired, people are being released, people are being let on leave. So I'd like to remind you that sometime or other, I hope you guys put in this new staff and the new HR person puts in an actual staffing report that shows what things are available, what things are, what things have been filled, what things have been left vacant that you have in the budget, and what things have been replaced by substitute or temporary employees. I'm particularly interested, as I wrote you, on things having to do with pupil services, because I've seen over the last several years, there are often $100,000 or $200,000 left for pupil services positions that didn't get filled. And at Castro, for instance, there's a pupil services position that goes vacant today, according to your last meeting, and it's going to stay vacant for 5 weeks. That's a person is an at-risk supervisor who is the person who gets certified by, this is something new I learned, Bill. Gets certified by the county is essentially the new version of a truancy officer who isn't just trying to arrest people, but is trying to get people to come to school and work with the parents. And if that position is left vacant for 5 weeks at the beginning of the school year, this is a position that I think if it was operating efficiently, they would know before school starts who had been chronically absent last year, and it would already be driving out and talking to those parents and those kids. So if that person in that position is left vacant for 5 weeks, you are, by your oversight, I think, are contributing to the chronic absenteeism at Castro. Now, whether that will get shown in one of these staffing reports, but that's the kind of thing that happens. You make a budget, position doesn't get filled, somebody leaves it for a temporary reason. It's more than a month, and it's a crucial position for those students and families. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Any final comments from the trustees? Hey, do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by trustee Reed and a second by trustee DeFazio to approve the consent agenda as presented. We will, because trustee Henry is remote, we will take a roll call vote. Trustee Henry,
Yes.
trustee Conley,
Aye.
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 and I also say aye. The trustees passed the consent agenda unanimously. Next, we'll move on to communications, employee organizations. Is there any member of an employee organization who wishes to speak? Do not see any. Any district committees? Trustee DeFazio?
Yes, so last week on September 23rd, we had our first meeting of the Health and Wellness Committee. We welcomed our new members. This was run by Director Jinbo. We welcomed our new members. We reviewed the goals that we had passed last year and then discussed some activities to work towards those goals. So, my report.
Anyone else like to speak on district committees? Trustee Conley?
Yes, on September 22nd, there was the first meeting of the DLAC committee, which is our district ELAC committee. And it was, there was a training presented by our Director of State and Government Affairs, Jeff Ching, for all of the participants on the DLAC. And then also just kind of general introductions of the committee. And then people were able to also share any pressing issues that they had at the time. But it was a great start to the year. And I look forward to the committee meeting regularly and hearing more from our ELACs.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, superintendent report.
Just noticing time, I think I'll hold mine till the end, if that's okay. Okay, we'll move on right to the McKinney-Vento.
We're gonna wait till after that, okay? Okay, before we do take community comments, I want to make a statement. Because the public comment period is for members of the board to hear comments related to district business, we ask that speakers focus their comments on matters within the board's jurisdiction and direct their comments to the board. While the board welcomes and respects the rights of members of the public to share comments regarding matters within its jurisdiction, we are committed to maintaining a civil, respectful, and productive environment at our meetings where our families, staff, and the community feel safe to express themselves free from bullying, harassment, and threats. Additionally, per our board bylaws, the board shall not permit any disturbance or willful interruption of our meetings and persistent disruption by an individual or group, or any conduct or statements that threaten the safety of anyone at the meeting shall be grounds for the board president to terminate the privilege addressing the board. It is also important for members of the public to be aware that negative or derogatory comments made against district employees or other individuals, even those made during a public board meeting, should be avoided. Although the board may not prohibit such comments, there are processes available for lodging complaints about district employees that afford additional opportunity to be heard that is allowed under the open meeting law that governs this meeting. Before each of the remaining agenda items, I will ask members of the public who are present and who are interested in speaking on the current agenda topic to submit a public comment card. And I will also ask those online to indicate their interest in being placed into a queue. Only those who submitted a public comment card and those who have been placed in the queue will be called upon to speak during the public comment period, which will come after the board has the opportunity to ask questions on the agenda item. We'll move on to the community comments section. This is the time reserved for community members to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board and administration welcome this opportunity to listen. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. Okay, is there any member of the public wishing to speak on this item? Please submit your card.
I already submitted.
Just please hold on a moment. I didn't call you yet. Is there any member of the public online who wishes to speak? I do not see any. anyone online. You may go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
Did you get the handout? I wish you'd change this procedure because stuff that I hand out
Please
doesn't
pick a
manage to
top-
make it to you
please-
where you start.
Please.
Could
speak
you
to the topic,
please not
to me.
interrupt me? I'm
No,
talking to the board.
No, you speak to the
I
topic.
don't care. I'm talking to the board. That's what
I'm
I have
gonna
the
have
right
you-
to
I'm
do.
gonna have you
Please be
removed.
quiet and not interrupt me.
Please sit down. I'm not taking your comments anymore.
You're
Please sit
not
down.
taking it, the board is.
I'm not taking your comments.
You're
Please sit down.
interfering with me and my time. You want to restart?
I just made a statement. You understand it. Please sit down. We'll move on to the next item. Discussion and action. First item is McKinney-Vento update. Superintendent Bear.
Yes, good evening. We've invited Director Chang and two McKinney-Vento staff, Priscilla and Eduardo, to give a presentation on the status of our McKinney-Vento students this year.
Good evening, trustees. Tonight, my team and I are glad to be presenting an update about our McKinney-Vento students. McKinney-Vento services are, of course, aligned to our strategic plan, and I'm very glad to be here today, joined by our two McKinney-Vento liaisons, Priscilla and Eduardo, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, trustees. My name is Priscilla Bogdanich. I am the McKinney-Vento that works right now with Crittenden and the feeding schools that in that area. I've also been in our district for many years in various positions. I've been a mom, volunteer, SELT coordinator, SCEF, and now for the past 9 years, I've been the McKinney-Vento liaison.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eduardo Rios. I'm the other McKinney-Vento liaison, and I am working currently with our Graham Middle School and also its feeding schools. This is my second year as a McKinney-Vento liaison, but before that, I was working already at BUB in EMI. Well, as you can see there, our work is solely rooted on federal law. So it's ensuring that our students experiencing any homelessness have the same rights and access as all other students. Under McKinney-Vento, we guarantee immediate enrollment, also school stability, transportation when needed, and they also have the right to equal access to all school programs and activities. This allows us to actively connect to families and just be able to work with them, but at the same time be able to provide that access or connection between programs and activities. This also helps us to identify any barriers that the families or students may have and be able to remove them so that every student has an opportunity to succeed.
So how do families qualify as McKinney-Vento? Families have to self-identify. And with that, they have at any point they can self-identify, and we work really closely with the school staff in making sure that we can catch any life-changing events in the families, so we can identify them and support them as quick as we can. In addition to that, we do work very closely with Mountain View Los Altos School District, our colleague there, because with the parent consent, we always reach out to each other, and that way we can support the whole family.
So our district actually has one of the larger McVie populations among elementary districts in our county. If we look at this table, you'll see some statistics for our geographic neighbors as well as our school districts that are of similar percentage of McKinney-Vento population. So from a McVie perspective, our needs actually more closely mirror those of those districts in San Jose.
And this is more of a historical view of our numbers of McKinney-Vento students. And just kind of seeing, you can see the point and count right now, but this doesn't show necessarily the number of students we serve through the year. Because for example, last year, we ended up with 248 students. However, we had 69 students at one point during the school year. They were identified as McKinney-Vento and they left our district. So that adds up the numbers, but they don't count at the end. The other thing that I want to point out is the difference. We do have the end of the school year because there was a big change of numbers, right? We ended up the school year with 248. We started the school year with 180. We have the breakdown of all the families. We know where they are. Part of it was the 8th grade generation that moved on to Mountain View Los Altos. Those were 23 students, 31 students. 23 students left our district either to go to private school, charter schools, other schools in the state. 2 students moved out of the USA. 4 students, for example, decided that their living arrangement was not due to economic hardship and remained doubled up, but not due to economic hardship, so they don't qualify as McKinney-Vento. And 23 of our families actually are now on the lease, so they don't qualify as McKinney-Vento. Those are great numbers to know. Sorry. Right. And as you can see, here's the breakdown of our students. The numbers different since the beginning of the school year. We had 180 students, now we have 193. This was in early September. Our numbers have already changed as of today. But even though our largest population is in Castro Mistral, Crittenden, and Graham, I want to point out that, for example, the reality of our populations are different. Castro Mistral, for example, most of our families are doubled up compared to, for example, Montaloma and Crittenden receive all the families that come from the shelter, the life move. So the needs of the families are different. The site needs are different. So our role and what we try to do is make sure that we serve our community as needed and to make sure that it's according to their needs at any given point.
So as McKinney-Vento liaisons, we have a couple of responsibilities here, and we provide that case management, that advocacy, so that we can protect our students' rights. We monitor their attendance, assist with the school processes, and connect families with resources, whether that's school supplies, community services, or even conducting home visits to make sure that our students are safe. Also, we support parents through ongoing trainings and provide annual staff training, which we did right at the beginning. And that way we ensure that every school is prepared to really know how to handle and serve our students that are experiencing homelessness.
So for us to be able to do our job, we collaborate very closely with multiple organizations and we partner with them in different ways. The first one, for example, with Mountain View Los Altos is to make sure that our families are served as they need, right? Many of our families have siblings, have students in both districts. We also work very closely with the shelter to make sure that all the needs of our families are met. We work very closely and meet with CSA, Hope's Corner, Hope Hunger, Here for You, and many others, which provide services of food and clothing for our families. We meet regularly with different organizations and participate in multiple meetings, monthly meetings. For example, at the county, we meet with all the McKinney-Vento and foster youth liaisons from the county. So we interact and work very closely with our colleagues for ideas, brainstorming, solutions, and it's always a very beneficial meeting. We also attend challenge team and the Mountain View community-based organization meeting on a monthly basis to stay up to date with their services and with the calendars to be able to serve our community. And in addition to that, we always like to have a space and link the community services and the community organizations linked to our families. So, for example, last year we had Pacific Clinics and CSA come to Spark to our office, and we were able to connect them with our families that attended our encuentro. And early this year, many of those organizations were at the back to school celebration.
Our school and parent activities and resource center, known as Spark, opened on the fall of 2024. And it was really designed to have a welcoming and private space for our McKinney-Vento families. That way they would feel respected and supported. Now here, families can obtain access to immediate referral or access to foods, clothing, school supplies, and transportation assistance. It's also where we hold many of our parent trainings or workshops, and that way families can learn new ways on how they can support their children's education.
What makes Spark really unique is the fact that it's a very safe and trustworthy place where families really they open up. And many times we've ended up with parents in tears telling us their story, and that we learn about the needs of the family, their trauma, and how we can really support them. So it's really to have that space where families feel comfortable, safe, where they can really reach out and get the services that we need to provide for their families.
So I want to talk a little bit about our recent improvement efforts in terms of the services that we provide for our students who are experiencing homelessness. So beyond supporting our McPhee families with what the law requires and our liaisons have outlined so far, we've also got teams working on improving school outcomes for unhoused students. Over the past 3 years, we've focused on reducing chronic absenteeism and reducing suspension rates, improving academic achievement. Teams have included district office staff as well as site staff, and this work has led to improvements in our attendance protocols, specifically with minimizing loopholes where students who need our assistance immediately may fall through the net because of timing and busy school day. We've also retrained our school principals and our at-risk intervention supervisors on behavior incident protocols to make sure that they include our McKinney-Vento liaisons when considering a suspension of a student, and also to be involved with the reentry meeting for students coming back from suspension. We've added reminders on our incident reporting pages of Our School, our student information system, to very clearly indicate when a student who's involved in a behavior incident, while we're documenting it, we can see this is a McKinney-Vento student. We must reach out and talk with our liaisons before we take further action. We've furthermore made efforts to reach out to all McKinney-Vento families multiple times because they all qualify for our Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, or MVWSD+, and we encourage them to enroll in the program. So here is a summary of our outcomes so far. We are proud to say that we have significantly reduced chronic absenteeism rates among McKinney-Vento's students by nearly 30% in the last 3 years. Suspensions are also down. Enrollment of McVee's in ELOP, or the Expanded Learning Program, is 10% higher than the enrollment rate among all students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged. However, academic performance still remains an area of concern. Our McKinney-Vento students are still significantly underperforming the average and in comparison to other SED students as well. So some key takeaways, like every other family, our McKinney-Vento families are important members of our community. Their living situations, however, do present many challenges, most of which are systemic. The nature of the housing situation causes significant instability, leading to interruptions in services at schools as well. Our area's high cost of living will likely contribute to high McKinney-Vento numbers for the foreseeable future. City and county and state efforts to address this are also not currently able to meet demand, as there are often long wait lists for spots in shelters and at safe parking. The recent political climate and uncertainty about federal funding contributes to the issues facing this group, and despite some good progress, there are still persistent academic gaps that will have lasting effects on our students' futures. But of course, that's why we're here, right? To keep working on these issues, to improve a little bit every day, to continue this important work. Our next steps are to convene a team to keep working on the target areas, especially the academic development. To bolster our students' experiences at ELOP, we will begin new programming to begin to build background knowledge, which is a huge opportunity for not just the McKinney-Vento students, but also many of our socioeconomically challenged and multilingual learner students. And of course, our McKinney-Vento families will continue to receive support from Eduardo, Priscilla, and myself, and all of the SCEFs and all of the staff at each of the school sites. And we're proud of that work. Thank you for your support, and we're happy to take your questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the trustees? Trustee Conley.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and I'm so glad that we're having a public discussion about the needs of our McKinney-Vento students, all of the work that you and your team have been doing to try and meet those needs. So we have the kind of point in time count that we do as a district, right, with our numbers. EdData.gov reports the cumulative enrollment for McKinney-Vento students as well, and they have it up 2021, the 20 to 21 school year was 194, 21 to 22 was 236, 22 to 23 was 333 students, and the 23-24 school year was 349. Do you have the cumulative number for the 24-25 school year? It's not up on EdData yet.
24.
So last school year, our cumulative number.
Yeah, so that would be the 248 plus the 69 students, so approximately 310.
Okay, so it did go down a little bit. The cumulative went down a little bit last year. And then, oh, I have so many questions. I'll just ask a couple more and then I'll let other trustees jump in. And then if something doesn't get answered, I'll come back to it. I know that transportation can be a real challenge, like especially if we have students, for example, in the safe parking lot out at Shoreline. How is transportation going this year? What are we doing to get kids to school if they're at some of these different sites? And are there any needs that we can support?
So right now, we actually started the year. Last year, we talked with transportation department. And this year, we started the year with a clear plan and how to support our families. We have a bus that goes every day to the shelter. And for the safe parking at Shoreline, we do have a bus that would be ready to go pick up students if it's needed. As of now, nobody has requested transportation from Shoreline, and we've been checking in with the families that live there. And there hasn't been an issue of arriving tardy or not coming to school due to transportation. So at the moment, it hasn't been needed this year.
Okay, that's great though, that we have a bus available if we need it. And Eduardo looks like he has something else to say. Yeah.
I was just going to say about the transportation part. We also try to first try to see what's available within the city, right? So there's a free shuttle. So we try to talk about all these things that are possible for our families first, if that's something that they can do. So for example, we have an appointment with a family tomorrow to make sure that the side SCEF and I meet with the family, show them the route, because that's what she requested. We also have like VTA tokens too available for families to support them.
Perfect. And then do we have a sense of, you talked a little bit about the difference in the McKinney-Vento populations attending Graham versus Crittenden, for example, students who may be in the shelter or vehicles versus doubling up. I know there have also been situations where we don't know where the kids are. Or maybe it's a family that's in San Jose, but they still have right of return to the school. Just kind of generally, what's the breakdown this year of where families are?
Most of the families that we don't know exactly where they are RV dwellers, where that they move within the city. They have to move every 3 days, but they stay in an area and they normally let us know where they are. Right now, I think there's only two students that we know as of today that we don't know necessarily where they're going to be tomorrow, because one of them is couch surfing. So sometimes they're at a motel, sometimes with family. And the other one is a family that just lost their housing and right now is in between motels, depending on the rate. So those are the only two that we know right now. We don't know exactly where they're sleeping as of tonight, right? However, everybody else that's in RVs and are not at safe parking, we know in the general area where they're staying.
And then my last question for now. Do you still need a washer and dryer for Spark? Because if we can make that happen, we've talked about that in the past, trying to have laundry available there.
Want to give it to me? Right now, there's actually laundry available at the MOT, right? At the maintenance operations.
Which is adjacent to
which is right
the
next
same
to.
campus.
And so I think it's been doing the job, but we'll let you know if we can use another one or something happens with that situation.
We had some washers that we had purchased and dryers that we had purchased for the housing because we were waiting on the arrival of the industrial pay-to-play ones. And I don't know where those ended up. They're sitting in the MOT yard. Well, if we need washers and dryers, it would be great to either distribute them to other school sites so that families can use them at an easier location, or to share them with Spark, or if MOT needs more. But I'll hold my other questions for trustees.
Trustee Henry, did you have any questions? Okay. One question I have, are the students able to participate in the after-school programs that we offer throughout the district? Do a large number of them do?
Yes, about 80% of the McKinney-Vento students do participate.
That's great. Go ahead, Trustee Conley.
So some of our funding for the McKinney-Vento, for your positions, for example, comes from federal funding under the McKinney-Vento Act, I believe. Do we see that funding being threatened at all at the federal level?
That's hard to say. That's really anybody's guess at this point.
Okay, but we have our money for this year and next year?
This year, yes, but next year, I believe, is still uncertain, right? Right.
We don't know for next year. We'll know in October. I have the feeling this board would be amenable to advocating with our legislators. Granted, they aren't in the majority at the federal level, but if there's any way we can help in advocacy around that funding, or advocating for other levels of government to pick up that funding if it gets dropped by the federal government, I'm personally quite happy to do so. And then, do you feel like the drop of numbers that we saw at the beginning of the school year this year, we have seen in the past public charge be something that was very frightening for families, that discouraged families. This was back in the first Trump term, where there was a concern that if families completed any type of paperwork for services or support, they might have their ability to apply for citizenship threatened, or they might be identified in a negative way. Do we think that is playing into our McKinney-Vento self-identification this year, given the current political climate and concerns around ICE?
As of right now, we haven't seen a big drop. We only saw 2 families that early June said we are going back home before anything happens, but that was only two students. Other than that, I've only heard of 1 or 2 families that have said, I really don't want to put my name anywhere. We're still supporting them and they're not, they're doubled up. But
I guess I meant
That's
new
all.
families who might not be self-identifying because they're afraid of being in a federal database.
we've been checking with the SCEFs. We haven't really heard anything as of right now.
Okay, thank you.
I've only heard of 2.
Okay.
And something that we actively do too is some parents they do have that question about public charge, but we do our best to educate them about what are some of the things that are considered public charge, and these type of things like being part of our McKinney-Vento doesn't really affect them in that way, and also like applying for like food assistance, like applying for CSA, going through these programs is not something that will affect them. And so we do our best to show them with documentation, so that way they feel safe. So that way we help them in learning about that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Not, we'll move on to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Please turn in a card. And any member wishes to speak online, please raise your hand so you can get in the queue. I do not see anyone online, and I have one card from an in-person speaker, Mr. Nelson.
Yes, I think this had really nice statistics on the nearby and comparable district homeless numbers. I'd never seen those before. So it's really good to tie
Please
those
address your
down.
comments to the board. Thank you.
And the other thing I thought was pretty good about this report was it's good to see chronic absence decreases, particularly in these clients. I think it's unfortunate, trustees, that that staff originally so downplayed the decrease, substantial decrease in the math and English academic proficiency. This is in the original write-up, not necessarily in the verbal report that you got. It's not just this program responsible for the academic decline. That's an example of the declines that happened in relative rankings of our elementary schools. The lower ranking elementary schools with higher numbers of SED students and these kinds of students decreased most, while the schools that didn't have very many of these students are the ones that are keeping their rankings relative to the other elementaries in the state of California. It's good for all the staff, not just this staff, to take responsibility for the problems we've been having over the last several years in the metrics that prove we're not doing very well in academic proficiency for our SED and our Hispanic subgroups. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Any final comments from the board? Trustee Conley?
I mean, I'd again like to express I'm very glad that this came as an agenda item so that we can have a public discussion about it. When I was doing the circuit for city council last year, I endlessly talked about the needs of our unhoused students because it was something that is shocking to many people in Mountain View. They don't realize that we have students and families without stable housing. Castro Elementary School, I think it was 20% of the students were McKinney-Vento last year. I didn't make the breakdown for this yet because we haven't had our enrollment update, our overall enrollment update for the school to do the comparison numbers, but that's significant and people are shocked that that's down the street from Google. And so I think that when we look at the plight of our students and their families and also all of the challenges it ties into in their academic performance and their, we've decreased chronic absenteeism, but it's still slightly higher for the student population as well. We need to be doing better. We need to be expanding housing opportunities within our community, especially for our very low income families. And I know that there's so much more work to be done in this area. I appreciate your tirelessness, and Spark is an incredible example for our county. I tell other school districts about it all the time because it truly is an innovation to create a center that is a safe space that's built on relationships, that is trying to coordinate these different service providers and opportunities for families who need that support. I'm going to make a pitch. The Santa Clara County School Boards Association has a committee that I co-founded that's focused on supporting our unhoused students across the county. And we're holding an event on November 15th that's a symposium on how to better support our unhoused students. Priscilla has graciously agreed to be on one of the panels because, again, Spark is very innovative within our county. But I think we need to continue as a board and as a community to draw attention to this issue, to advocate for these students and families, to expand housing opportunities and to expand resources, especially in our current political climate.
Trustee DeFazio?
Yes, thank you so much for all the presentation and all the work you do to reach some of our most vulnerable students and members of our community that need help. I think one thing that worries me is with like the point in time counts going up and in our community, right? Like seeing fewer McKinney-Vento students. I would love it if it was because they were all being housed and things were helping, but I'm worried that, I think to Trustee Conley's questions earlier, that folks are less likely to self-identify and less likely to kind of outreach to us. I know it's like, I think the sheltered versus unsheltered, I know there's the 70% in unsheltered increase, which is like fewer of the students we see generally, and then sheltered was only rose a little bit, I think, over the 2023-2025 timeframe. But I worry that there might be, and I know it's really hard to reach a lot of these folks, like there might be people that we could be serving that like, and I don't know how to address it in the current climate of getting more people to come out and get the services that they are entitled to and that they need to thrive in our schools. So it's mostly just my comments there. That's, I think, something that's going to be I know you all work tirelessly to probably figure that out, but that's something that's on top of mind. And so any ideas that we have for connecting more with families that are there, I think is a worthy thing for us to strive for.
Good. Trustee Reed?
Thank you for the work that you do. It's great to see the chronic absenteeism and the suspensions down, and also the process of inviting liaisons into the conversations where the students are being disciplined on school campuses. That's all great to hear. It's still higher as compared to other the rest of the student population. So it is continued work going forward, but it's definitely a great step. The Spark program is fantastic, still new, and I love that parents are feeling that it's a safe space. And hopefully, once that gets more, that more families within our community know that it's a safe space, that will start to bring more who need those services to come out and get those services, and that continuing to build those relationships that you are so great at building will continue to help make the students feel like this is a safe space for them, and hopefully that will start to show in academic progress for them. So it's still fairly early in this new stage of what you guys are trying to build, and hopefully we're going to start to see some of that progress lead into the academics once they're feeling secure and safe and supported in their environment. So thank you for the work you do.
You know, the comment I'd like to make is I had an opportunity to speak to a couple of our city council members recently, and you know, talking about our agenda and specifically this topic, and they had just assumed that the McKinney-Vento students came from the RV housing, and they were very much shocked to learn that that wasn't the case. So I would encourage you, any opportunity you have, or to make the time to meet with the our community leaders in the city and just let them know, what the numbers are, what's going on, because they care very much about affordable housing. And this will help fit into, understand really what the issues they're dealing with. So, these are really good numbers and really informative. And yeah, it's nice to see them all in one place, really. So thank you very much.
Might I offer a suggestion? If it's possible, I feel like we may have done this in the past as well. Would it be possible to send a letter on behalf of the board sharing kind of this update with our city council members so that they're aware of our McKinney-Vento population this year?
And invite them then to, get in contact with the presenters and meet with
Yeah.
them.
Thank you.
That'd be fine. Okay, there's Trustee Henry. Deb?
I don't have anything to add to what my colleagues have said, but I do appreciate the presentation and the conversation.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next topic, which is discussion budget scenarios. Dr. Westover will be presenting.
All right, good evening. So this is a follow-up to what we started speaking about during the last board meeting when we were discussing AV growth and how assessed value impacts our budget. So tonight, by board request, we'll be going through different scenarios, and we can do any scenario the board would like. In the presentation, we tried to include information that might make it easy to think through what a particular scenario might look like. But with that said, we'll get started. So of course, it always connects back to our strategic plan, making sure we have an equitable distribution of resources that support student success. And then our board resolution. So our board resolution says that we stay between 17 and 20% reserve level in the third year out, but it can include deficit spending in any or all of those 3 years. So the third year, our goal is to stay between that 17 and 20%. So a little bit of background, our current real estate tax revenue, or AV, is trending low. For the past 6 years, we've seen an average of 8.79% AV growth. And currently, we're seeing 2.34 for the current year. So makeup of our property tax base is 50% residential and 50% commercial. So what we're really seeing is the commercial side being greatly impacted. Our neighboring districts like Los Altos and MVLA are seeing less of an impact because they don't have as much commercial property as we do. The assessor has shared that we should expect to see similar numbers for the next few years. And to put this into context, 8.79%, approximately $7 million, and 2.34%, approximately $2 million. So there's a pretty significant delta there. Expenditures continue to rise in the areas of staffing and programming in order to meet student needs. Our staffing costs, so direct support of students, is over 83% of our budget. We also have unfunded mandates of TK and after-school programs. TK is costing us approximately $3.5 million annually that we've had to absorb without receiving additional funding, and also special education. Moving forward, we'll need to evaluate expenditures and prioritize student learning. And today we're going to review some of the assumptions that are used to create the budget and ask the board for guidance on what assumptions should be used when we come back to you for first interim. So looking at some of what a multi-year projection is. So every interim, we produce a 3-year MYP to forecast the district's financial health beyond the current year. It's based on trends and specific assumptions. It's important that when we look at the MYP, we use it as a guide and not a measuring stick, because as a school district, we're constantly in flux based on what's needed at the school sites, what staffing we need, who needs additional support. And to give it an idea of how much this budget can flux between interim periods, so budget adoption and first interim, which is just a few months, we see up to $1 million or more in changes just from one department. And that's because we're responding to something that's happening in the school district. So this is a chart looking at our assumptions for the next 3 years. For salary schedules, we have a multi-year contract. This year, there's a 5% raise. Next year, there's a 4% raise. In the 27-28 year, there are no raises calculated into our MYP. Our assessed value at budget adoption, we had actually lowered it to 3%. We're seeing it's coming in lower at the 2.23%. In the 26, 27, 27, 28, we've set it at 2%. CalSTRS and CalPERS rates are set by the state, so those are included in there. A parcel tax is included. We use CPI for many of our different expenditures. This is based on School Services of California. And then in the year 27-28, we have a textbook adoption. So I'll point this out. We also did a 6-year MYP, and you'll see where this $2.8 million comes in. And then for additional context, a step average cost, meaning no raise, we would expect about $2.16 million just in staffing costs when staff get their steps. This is our current approved budget, and it's color-coded. In the next slide, I'll show this table larger so you can see the numbers. This excludes Google lease revenue from February 2026 moving forward because Google gave us notice that they were ending their lease. In year 1, we're showing 3% AV, Shoreline at 6.5 million, and we have our 5% raise built in, so in green when you're looking at the expenditures. In year 2, it's a 2% AV, Shoreline at 6.5 million, and the 4% raise. In year 3, 2% AV, Shoreline at 6.5 million, and our $2.8 million textbook adoption with no raise. So that leaves us at about 9.8% reserve in the 3rd year, which is lower than our board policy of 17 to 20%. This is what it looks like as a graph because it's easier to see what's happening with our reserve level. You'll see that the decline is quite sharp because in the out years, we start pulling from our reserves heavily to pay for our ongoing costs. This is looking at known changes to revenue based on what happened at budget adoption. So this is updating just where our revenues are because there's been some changes since budget adoption in June. So in year 1, we have 2.34% assessed value. That's down from 3%. Shoreline from 6.5 million to 7.7 million. This is a final number based on our agreement. Year 2, 2% AV. Shoreline going from 6.5 million to 7.09 million. This is an estimate from the city. And then year 3, 2% AV, Shoreline at 6.5 million as an estimate. This brings us to about 10.49% reserve level in the 3rd year. So looking a little bit better, but still below that 17% threshold. And then it also slightly adjusts the use of our reserves, but still landing us at 10.49%. So now we're going to go through a few different scenarios. So this is adding the Google lease revenue back in. So we don't have a signed agreement with Google at this point. So as a reminder to the public, Google gave us notice that they were ending their lease at the Slater property and at Therkoff. And as part of that agreement, they need to bring it up to DSA standards. Our construction manager estimates to bring Slater up to the DSA standards, it'll take about 2 years. At this point, we're still in conversations with Google about how this is going to come about. If the building is not at DSA standard, we cannot use it for students. So right now, the Slater campus and Therkoff campus, we cannot have students in it or in them. I can run through the assumptions really quickly. So this is the only change is adding the Google lease revenue back in. And this puts us at 15.3% reserve level in year 3. Looking at it graphically. So our next scenario is Google lease and 6% AV. So 6% AV we can consider as this was once what we usually expected. So adding 6% and the Google lease. This leaves us with 28.22% reserve level in the 3rd year out. And it, of course, looks much, much better. Unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing with AV growth right now. This next one is having the Google lease and 2% AV. So scenario number 4. This looks a bit better, puts us at 14.8%. And this might be the potentially most likely scenario, low AV, but we're guaranteed the Google lease revenue. Looking at it graphically. And now this is our 6-year MYP. Let me,
Can you go back one slide just for a moment?
Sure.
On all these slides, just pointing out what I think is understood, but understanding what that deficit spend is, right, in the out years, that's what's really critical here. And so as a result, I talked to Rebecca about building a 6-year forecast just to see what the trends will look like. She'll talk a bit about that.
yes. And I think to Superintendent Bayer's point, like the trajectory of the reserve level is a little alarming because we're so heavily reliant on our reserves in order to pay for our ongoing expenses. So we did a 6-year MYP, and these are assumptions based on assumptions. So this is our best guess as we are right now. Looking at the left-hand side, it is our assumptions for revenue. This is including 2% AV, shoreline revenue, and then a 3.1 million lease, and then no raise. So remember, starting in year 3, we have years 3 through year 6, no raises offered to staff. General information, if you wanted to try to play with the numbers a little bit in your mind of where this might end up, 1% of AV is about 800,000. And for the 27-28 year, a 1% raise is about 1 million. So 1% of AV doesn't get us even close to providing that 1% raise because we also have other expenditures that are increasing at the same time. Looking at it graphically, so the green line is our 17% reserve level where we want to try to stay. In the year 27-28, we see our $2.8 million textbook adoption. So you'll see a jump in our expenditures, and then it starts to go back down. The orange line is our use of the reserve level. So you'll see in year 6, we're down to negative 8.95%. So no reserve left. In year 5, we're negative, and then in year 4, we're at 7.13%. So sometimes the question comes up as, why don't we use all our reserves? Because this is what reserves are for. Times are bad, let's use them. It's important that we maintain, especially as a basic aid district, that we have a reserve for cash flow stability. We get our revenue twice a year for property taxes. And if we don't have cash, we're going to have to enter short-term borrowing and take out trans. We've talked about this in previous meetings, but basically it's money down the drain because we're paying interest in order to make it from basically paycheck to paycheck. It protects student services, reserves by time, as we are right now, to employ solutions thoughtfully instead of reactively to mid-year cuts. Because we have the reserve level right now, we're able to have discussions like this as opposed to saying we need to make changes immediately in this current year. Also, one-time versus ongoing, using reserves for one-time expenses is better than using it for ongoing expenses. Over 83% of our budget is made up of ongoing expenses with personnel. The cost of capital, because we have strong reserves, we have the highest rating possible when we go out for bonds and COPs. Risk and emergencies, we saw this during COVID. When we needed something, we were able to purchase what we needed right away, as opposed to waiting for money coming from the federal or state level. And also in labor negotiations, healthy reserves provide flexibility for sustainable agreements. If we didn't have a healthy reserve, we would probably be speaking with our unions right now about not being able to afford things. So in summary, we are anticipating slowed AV growth over the next few years based on current trends. Without strong AV growth, we must bring our expenditures in line with our revenue to ensure financial stability. We use assumptions to develop our budget, which impacts our projections. If the board chooses to project a higher AV and AV comes in low mid-year, we may need to make adjustments. So right now, this is staff's recommendation for first interim recommendations. So of course, keeping this negotiated salaries, our assessed value at 2.34%, dropping it from that 3 that we initially thought, 2% in the out years, keeping our textbook adoption in, and then really wanting to have a discussion with the board about what you would like potentially staff to use or change our assumptions for first interim. And then also questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Westover. So, questions from the trustees? Go ahead, Trustee Conley.
Yeah, the third year out, so when you talked about the funds from the Shoreline Fund, and you said the city estimate for next year is slightly higher, it's a little over 7 million. The year after that, our third year out, is that 6.5 an estimate from the city, or just that we don't have an updated estimate for that year?
We don't have an updated estimate, and we were watching. So this year we're getting more than 7 million. Next year it dropped because of, I'm assuming they also had reassessments. So taking that same a drop and thinking it's going to drop again. He's following the same pattern is what we were thinking.
Have they had their plan for Shoreline updated yet? Because I know it seems like the movement there is going to be more towards residential development, and within the agreement that benefits us more than commercial development out there, frankly. Have we seen the city take that up yet?
Not yet.
So they're still in negotiations. And then, well, I'll let other trustees ask some questions.
Yeah, I have some questions about the assumptions. So, first of all, the $6.5 million for Shoreline, is that the base that we can't go below, or it can go below that if
Yes.
that's just okay, right? Understand that. The $3.1 million for the Google lease, especially in the long-term projection. So it's my understanding while Google is bringing the sites up to DSA standards, they would continue paying their lease. Right. And then after a couple of years, you said it would be brought up to DSA standards. Wouldn't the lease go away at that time? They turn it over to us and
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
The trustees would have the option, depending on how many students we have. Do we need to take the space back to use it for our own use? Do we want to release one site and keep one? So those are variables that the board would need to decide how they
that's
wanted.
not, yeah, just to be clear, it's not a continuing Google lease. It's
That's correct.
another potential
Another potential lease.
that we could do. So yeah, that might be changed to make it very clear.
Sure.
Then the raises for staff. I think at a minimum, wouldn't staff expect to receive a cost of living increase in salary?
I think there's salary is the number one item when we go to negotiations.
It would be pretty onerous to give no raises. So
yes.
And to me, it would seem like a bottom would be the 2% roughly 2% cost of living or whatever it was. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Trustee Henry? Any questions?
No, I think I had kind of a similar question to what you raised about if we do incorporate the Google lease in some way into the assumptions, whether that would be the actual current Google lease or just kind of an assumption that we would lease it to someone else in the future. It seems like maybe there's sort of both at play, that there will be potentially something to factor in based on the current lease, but potentially not if it's really more of a future discussion about what to do with that property kind of after Google's out of it. It seems like it's sort of a mixed. It's the assumptions seem to be presented kind of one way or the other, but it seems like the reality is sort of a mixed situation.
And I think it's a fair question. If it's not Google and it's another tenant in there, is 3.1 in the current market conditions still the number we should be using?
Trustee Conley?
Yeah, I appreciate the 6-year projection because it kind of shows how you can fall off the reserve cliff, right? At the same time, the multiple different assumptions scenarios show how seemingly small changes compound year to year. And we know even within our budget this year, there's already been a significant change. And so we're going to continue, as we look forward on these projections, is it fair to say that while that 6-year is a helpful illustration, it could be wildly different because we don't know what's going to happen economically in our region?
That's absolutely true.
That's fair. And then, I think the other thing that we haven't talked about for a while, our student population and future growth was a very large part of the district conversation. And I'd love to get an update. We've sort of stabilized our enrollment at this point. I don't know if we're still projecting growth or not because the units out in Shoreline, we'll see what happens if those come at some point or don't. But I think we also have to have in the back of our minds, are we going to see declining enrollment over time, which we have seen in many other districts in our region? Are we going to see slow but steady increase in student enrollment or not? Because that significantly impacts our costs as well. If student enrollment increases and we have to pay more for staff, that would also drive the assumptions, yes?
Yes.
And then my last question, comment before we get to discussion. In the past, there have been times when the board has voted to drop below the 17% threshold, yes?
Yes.
And that was to make one-time expenditures like with COVID, which you mentioned. I think we dropped to 14% in the third year out. And this is, just having been on the board for a while, my concern is that as we move forward with this discussion, we'll be looking at that third year out, given whichever scenario we choose, and using that to determine what kind of budget cuts we need to make to meet a 17% threshold. Is it possible? Sometimes we're kind of buying time with the reserves to see if the economic situation changes. Is it possible for the board to take a vote to lower that reserve threshold to 15%, for example, if they choose to do so?
I think the one thing, yes, it is absolutely possible to have the board vote to bring the reserve level down. One thing that I might be cautious of is because of the economic uncertainty right now, once that reserve level starts dipping, if AV growth stays weak the way it is right now, it is really hard to recover because then you're already kind of in the hole and then AV comes in lower. So you don't have a place to, capture that back. Whereas with COVID, I think it was a very unusual circumstance. And then things rebounded right after, and we had some of the highest AV growth that we've seen. So we were able to refill the coffers really quickly. So something just to be aware of is like if the board chooses to lower the reserve level to try to ride it out, absolutely possible. But then if things continue to decline, we'd be in a really difficult position because things are declining and we don't have a way to refill it. But
absolutely. I think we're at least this year and next year, we know what our salary raises are. And we don't know, there's so much we don't know beyond. Really, I feel like we have a more solid 2-year grasp and a less solid 3 to 6 year grasp. So it's also something that can be reevaluated at any time.
That's true. Not to just counterpoints, just for
Absolutely.
discussion.
No, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Sometimes it's also about timing and as we plan, because if we decide to make changes, there's very specific dates that we have to follow. So if we decide May, June, things really aren't looking good, we're pretty much set for our budget for the following year because it's all personnel related, 83%. So our ability to make changes mid-year is it's limited to just the percentage things like think of stuff that we could change. So you have specific times in which you can make those changes and make those, but.
So I was thinking less mid-year and more like gradual changes in year 1 and then reassessing and further changes in year 2. Does that seem at all feasible, or is that, weighing kind of the compounding impacts of that over time? Superintendent Bear.
I think that's what the last part is what really resonates with me, that understanding the compounding effects of that, right? Because we're already on the chart that's up right now, we are already committed to the first column, right? We are going into this year agreeing to deficit spend about $7.5 million, right? So we know that next year, the deficit spend is going to be over $9 million, right? That's if we don't do anything, it's going to be a $9 million deficit spend. And yeah, I mean, you can see the year after, right? We're below the 17%, which would be fine, right? To choose to go below it. But what troubles me in that particular scenario is that the deficit spend that is now in place in that scenario is really, really difficult to overcome, right? $13 million deficit spend is
That's a big hole.
severe.
Do you anticipate even with, we're going to be talking about the rents at the workforce housing site later tonight, even with the suggested lowered rents at that rate, do you anticipate there will still be, our goal is not to make a profit off of that site, but that there will still be some surplus that could go into our general fund or other budgetary needs?
So I think eventually, yes, but I think initially we're going to want to get that property stabilized with reserves for both operating expense and for a building reserve, and establish there's going to be need for an auditor, and you know, there are going to be needs that we're going to have to address initially, and we're projecting, I think, with along with Foothill, that's a year or two to really have that settle out. So we wouldn't see money come back until
Year 2 or 3.
year 2 or 3.
Okay, but that's helpful to know though. Thank you.
Is it Trustee Henry?
Yes, just had a follow-up question. Dr. Westover, you mentioned that we sometimes see up to $1 million in changes between the budget adoption and the first interim due to kind of changing needs. So one, I assumed in my mind when I heard that was increases, but I just wanted to clarify that. Could it swing either? Does it sometimes swing either way? And then do you see sometimes similar potential changes between first interim and second interim?
Yes to all of your questions. Between budget adoption and first interim, we'll often see that we have unfilled positions. So for those months, since we're not going to be paying those salaries, there's a savings because we're still trying to hire. We'll see an increase sometimes for staffing needs, sometimes in special ed specifically. And during first interim and second interim, we still see sometimes an increase in need. So it's I think, Lisa, maybe you're trying to, Trustee Henry, trying to feel, how much tolerance and how much changes there are going to be during interims and to expect. I think that's what we have gray hairs over because we're trying to figure out where the swings are going to be. But since it's so much driven by what's needed at the school sites, it's difficult to really, put a number on it.
Thank you.
I have another question. This is a presentation about revenues. So it's what you presented so far is pretty much existing revenue streams, and even the Google site, after Google stops leasing it, if we decide to lease it to another party, that's sort of a replacement of an existing revenue stream. Are there other revenue streams that we could tap into or create? Parcel taxes, right?
Absolutely. We could go out for another parcel tax and that would be incredibly helpful. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going through a list and most of the things are like, they don't bring in the amount of money that we're deficit spending. A parcel tax would.
Would be not to even recommend it or anything, but it would be nice to know what we could get from a parcel tax. Well, what our taxing, limit is, things like that, just to have an idea.
Sure.
And it's not that unfeasible, or we haven't been talking about a construction bond, for example. So anyway,
yeah,
talking about revenues, what else could we get? So that's something. Any further questions? Okay, I will take then public comments. Is there anyone in person who would like to speak, please submit a card. And if there's anyone online, please raise your hand and I'll put you in a queue. I do not see any member of the public present wishing to speak, and I see one online hand who I will take now, Miss Lou.
Hey, thank you for the presentations. I was just wondering if in the future, if there's a way to show, zoom in more details of the 83% mentions of, the student facing staff salary, just like a breakdown of, certificated staff or or classified staff, admin and all that stuff. That would be nice to see. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Lou. Back to the board for final comments. I think we almost asked a lot of comments in our questions, right? So Trustee Conley.
I'm curious to hear from the newer trustees. I feel like President Lambert and I have had to go on this ride before in different ways at different time periods. But I'm interested to hear from the newer trustees
And
about
for
their
different
thoughts.
purposes, actually.
Exactly. Yep.
Last time we had a budget talk that I remember, or I wasn't on the board then, but it was all about how are we going to expand our facilities, right? And
Right.
get the money for that. That was.
If I could take one comment, because I know the district a year plus ago, had to have similar conversations because of parcel tax and shoreline dollars, right? And what if those didn't come in? Fortunately, there was a way to access those, right? Amazing strength with the parcel tax passage last fall, and then we have a shoreline agreement in place that kind of guarantees us money from two different pots. I want to be careful to compare this. I'm not saying anyone is, but I think about the public, perhaps, us having this conversation again in a very different situation, right? We know that AV growth has slowed markedly, especially on the commercial side, and we know that there's a wave coming here, right? And it's just not here yet, but it's coming. And I think that's an important nuance to this.
When I first came on the board many moons ago, we had a budget where we had to make cuts, and we cut staff. There was a discussion about cutting librarians versus at-risk behavior coordinators versus, I think, SCEFs. And we did end up having to cut some staff positions. So it hasn't all been rosy for the last decade in the school district. But yes, I agree with you. Sometimes there are things you can take action on to solve the problem revenue-wise. Sometimes there aren't.
Trustee DeFazio?
Yeah, I think, just to the specific questions to us for direction, right? I think that the assumptions as presented seem reasonable to me. I think, conservatively not having a signed agreement, like assessed value growth roughly slowing and things like that. So generally, I think that makes sense to me. We don't have to take drastic actions to start cutting things yet, but it helps us understand where we're going and be able to adjust as we make our progress to the future. The other thing, that's speaking of revenue sources, right? I think, hopefully the city is also interested in having their assessed value grow as well. They are going to take property taxes in, and if residential is a stronger market right now, getting more homes built and getting more production out there could soften the blow. I'm optimistic that we will achieve our goals for housing production. And if we do, then our AV growth will be higher and things will potentially look better. I don't think we can count on that though. So just general things, but hopefully our incentives are aligned together. You know, I'd love to have more students in our schools. I think it is a cost, but it is our job, and it's what we're here to do, is have kids to educate and, you know, raise the next generation of folks in Mountain View. So
Mr. Reed?
Along the same lines, I feel that the projections were fair with the AV growth. And it's hard for us being so heavily dependent on commercial property, whereas neighboring districts don't have that. So it's good for us to understand this picture and what our deficit spending could lead to, so that we can start making decisions. Like we have the RFP right now out for somebody to help us evaluate programs, and starting to think about what, if we can't increase our revenues, what can we do to decrease that deficit spending, so that we don't end up in one of those not so great positions in the future. So this just allows us to step back and look and really consider all available options, so that we can make better financial choices moving forward without having to do anything really brash or quick, rushed.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Trustee Conley?
Just very briefly, I think I would love, when we have our enrollment update, to have a discussion around class size and school size, and kind of how all of that is playing out across the district right now, because that is a place where we have a large impact in terms of our costs. And I've been through this so I don't love the idea of cutting staff ever. And I have been pink slipped as a teacher at least 3 times in my career. So I've been through it, and I know how stressful it is for everyone involved. But I think we do need to figure out, are we also the right size for everything that we're doing? Not just programs, but the size of our programs, if that makes sense.
Yes. And we're prepared to bring that information.
Okay, we will move on to
President
item-
Lambert, I'm sorry, I want to make sure that I have all the information for first interim. So I think what I heard is you would like to go with the staff recommendations for the AV growth and then not including the Google lease.
I forgot to comment on that. I don't think the board should be setting AV growth rates. That should be coming from schooling services. None of us are fiscal accountants. None of us are, we're not working on this at the county level. So asking the board to set the assumptions doesn't make sense to me. It should be coming from staff as a recommendation about how to set assumptions. I really appreciated the multiple assumptions that were presented tonight, and I would love to see us continue in a format where we can look at the different scenarios instead of just choosing one, if that makes sense.
We can absolutely easily provide, 2 or 3 different scenarios at first interim, but for our official interim report that we send to the county, we will include what staff is recommending on the slide for assumptions, and then we will provide you the other scenarios to look at.
I guess one question I would have in considering scenarios moving forward, there was a discussion here about the fact that there's no across the board salary increases for 4 years. Would you like to see something else modeled besides that?
Say 2%, which is to say cost of living, so whatever that might be.
I know how challenging negotiations are, and I am worried about, I understand completely wanting to have something in there. And I just worry about, I'm not saying that we would ever go below 2%. But it is, we were fortunate enough to have 2 3-year contracts that we've had in a row. And it has been, I think, very helpful for everyone in the community to have a clear expectation of what's coming in the next 3 years with those contracts. And I hope that we can just continue to have fruitful negotiations and reach 3-year agreements.
Okay, we'll look at it a couple of different ways. Thank you.
Next item is an action item, resolution 01-100225, National Hispanic Heritage Month. Superintendent Bayer.
Yes, so September 15 to October 15 is the start of National Hispanic Heritage Month. We're coming up on it just before our next board meeting. So we thought this was the time to bring this forward to acknowledge our Hispanic and Latino community members and students who have made great impacts on our community and beyond.
Okay, thank you. I recommend that we do a choral reading of the resolution, but before I do, I want to see if any member of the public would like to speak on this, and we'll take their comments after we read the resolution. Is there anyone in person who would like to speak on this item? And is there anyone online who would like to speak on this item? Please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see anyone who wishes to speak on the item. We'll have a choral reading. We want to begin. Trustee Henry?
Right. Whereas members of the Mountain View Westman School District Board of Education are honored to join communities across the country in recognizing September 15th to October 15th, 2025 as National Hispanic Heritage Month. And
whereas MVWSD recognizes the importance of using inclusive language to invite discourse around the power of words to promote positive self-identity and belonging, and recognizes that the terms Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, and others are all valuable identifiers, and that each person should have the autonomy to self-describe. And
whereas Hispanic, Latino students and families make up the largest subpopulation of the MVWSD community members and are extraordinarily diverse, consisting of various nationalities, races, spoken languages, social and political histories, and cultural practices that should be celebrated and recognized as a key part of the social fabric in Mountain View. And
whereas Hispanic Latino members of our school community, including board members, teachers, staff, and administrators, have helped to positively shape our community and have a profound influence on the lives of our children. And
whereas Hispanic Latino families and parents have been integral to the prosperity of our community through their leadership, support, and advocacy of our schools, and whose many contributions to the nation are immeasurable and continue to leave an indelible mark on the U.S. culture and economy. And
whereas the history of inequitable outcomes for Hispanic Latino students and other marginalized groups in our community and across the state was exacerbated by the global pandemic, and reminds us to continue to highlight the need for targeted strategies and resources to close the opportunity gaps for Hispanic Latino students in MVWSD. And
whereas Mountain View Westman School District boasts of our dual immersion program at Gabriela Mistral that provides an opportunity for district families to benefit from immersive instruction in the Spanish language for all students at the site. And
whereas Mountain View Westman School District affirms its commitment to being a place where all students and families feel empowered to reach their highest potential, acknowledging that this excellence is born from a deep well of knowledge sustained through our diversity. And
therefore, be it resolved that the Mountain View Westman School District Board of Trustees adopts resolution number 01-100225 to encourage the recognition of National Hispanic Heritage Month in the schools of the district with culturally responsive activities, and to value the roles and contributions of Hispanic Latino people to the local and national economies, culture, and identity.
Okay, thank you. I will now take a roll call vote. Trustee Henry?
I'm sorry, I had a question, President Lambert, before we move through the vote, if that's all right. So in the past, we had a Cultural and Heritage Awareness Month calendar. And is this what the resolution was drawn from following our regular calendar?
That's correct.
And then in the past, we had a Better Together program where there were also not just a resolution, but activities and lessons and things throughout our schools that were actually celebrating and teaching children about the particular group that might be recognized that month. Is this still going on?
So I have to look at there is still a Better Together program. I have to look at the target areas and whether it's tied to Heritage Months or.
It was in the past, it was the theme, there were themes, but we also incorporated, every time there was a resolution, we incorporated activities around that within the school day as well.
Let me look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready for the roll call vote? Trustee Henry?
I will be an aye, but do we need a resolution? I mean, do we need a motion?
I make a motion to approve resolution number 01-100225, a resolution in support of recognizing National Hispanic Heritage Month.
I'll second.
Motion by Trustee Conley and a second by Trustee Reed that the board adopt resolution number 01-100225. Okay. Trustee Henry?
Aye.
Trustee Conley?
Aye.
Trustee Reed?
Aye.
Trustee DeFazio?
Aye.
Trustee Lambert? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. See any members of the public? So we will move on to the next item. Before Dr. Baer presents the item, I will ask any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please turn in a card or raise your hand and you will have the opportunity to speak after the board's questions.
Is it possible to take a short bio break, President Lambert? It's 9.
Okay. See no members of the public. I see one, Mr. Nelson, wishes to speak on this. Please put him in the queue. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Bear will present on item 9D, transitioning staff housing to corporation board or corporate board.
Great. Someone? Not yet. We just have the names. Is someone projecting? Can someone project the slides for this one? Thanks. So while we're waiting for that, just as a little history, on April 24 of this last calendar year, the Board of Trustees approved Resolution 06042425, approving the formation of a nonprofit corporation to govern the staff housing. And then at the September 18 meeting of this year, just a couple of weeks ago, the board appointed 4 directors to the MVW Residences Corporation Board. And as you remember, this is a nonprofit entity and has a separate and dedicated board for the oversight of staff housing. And this will allow the trustees and district leadership to stay focused on our core mission, which is educating the children of our community. So this presentation is really about setting up to hand off to the MVW Residences Corporation. Of course, we're fully conscious that we have a sale in progress with Foothill De Anza Community College District. So we're working to contemplate that as we move forward with these recommendations as well. All right, so just a quick background, you know that there's 144 units there. And it was a collaborative project between Mountain View Wisman, the City of Mountain View, and Miramar Capital, and it opened in February 2025. We started bringing residents in, and this is, of course, supported by Measure T. We rent 123 units to our employees. 20 of the units are reserved for the City of Mountain View employees. We currently have 55 filled, plus 1 that's occupied by the property manager. And of course, the residents, they qualify under the below market rate guidelines established by the city and state. Back on March 27, as we ventured down this road, we set some short-term success criteria for the project, and those were to fill the units, right, to do what we can to fill it. Make that project self-sufficient so it does not compromise our district budget. And again, allowing our time here as a governance team to be spent on student learning matters. So first, or one of the big pieces here is really looking ahead, setting the stage for lower rents. And this summer, as you recall, we purchased the land that sits beneath that staff housing. It was on a very expensive ground lease. And so we have eliminated those lease payments over the course of the next 55 years. We've also entered into a partnership with Foothill De Anza Community College District to sell 50 of those units. And those 2 actions combined have created a pathway for lower rents for our employees, really allowing us to achieve that desire to attract and retain teachers and staff members in our community. The land purchase and the unit sale have solved challenges, and we really think it's right-sized the number of units for us to have available to our employees, going from 124 available units to 74. We're also reducing the housing operating costs. As I said, completely funded the land purchase. And this will really allow our employees to really be embedded into our community, which is the goal here. All right, moving ahead. So the corporation board. So this has established a dedicated nonprofit entity, the Mountain View Wisman Residences Corporation. It's a separate and dedicated board for oversight and allows our board to stay focused on education. So the recommendations that we would like you to consider to push forward to that governing board. And by the way, we've reached out and let each of the 3 members know who interviewed that they were selected, and they're all thrilled and looking forward to that first opportunity to meet. So the recommendations we have going forward for you to consider and adopt are to lower the rents and also setting a strategy for holding sub-units initially for new hires and targeting hard to fill positions in our workforce. Also, that board is going to need to conduct a procurement process for a number of positions. There's going to be property management services, to shift the contract from the district to the corporation board, right? This is before we even go out for an RFP. They're going to need to engage with an executive director. They're going to need someone to actually do the work that they direct. Not envisioning necessarily that'll be a full-time position, but we'll let the governing board make that decision. They're also going to need to engage with legal services to deal with issues as they come up, and then also an auditing service, right, to make sure that there are regular audits conducted. As we keep looking forward to recommendations, we're going to bring to this board an amended set of bylaws at our next regular meeting. These will contemplate Foothill de Anza's joining the effort or the housing projects that will really codify Foothill de Anza's seat on that governance board. And then we're looking for that first meeting of this board to take place at the end of October. Charles, you should probably be thinking about that, right? We would look for an initial direction from this board for the new governing board to consider is looking at an average of 25% rate drop over the entire set of rental rates. Would that mean 25% drop for every category? Because remember, there are 80% units and 120, 150 units. The 120 AMI units have definitely been the harder to fill. We have filled completely and immediately the 80% AMI units. So we want them to look at that. And we know that there does need to be a greater impact on those 120 AMI units. And we look forward to a recommended implementation date of January 1. That'll give them a few months to work through this. At the bottom is a table just showing what we're suggesting. What you see there equates to an overall 25% reduction rate, even though some of them are a little more, some of them are a little less. I won't read through them, I'll let you look at them, but they're all significant rate drops and in line with the survey data we had heard back from our employees on when we were asking about, especially the 120 AMI prices, where we're filling it, became clear that the pricing was just a bit too high. So the 120 units really do take a pretty nice drop there. And then when we look at prioritization of the units, since we know we're going to have a limited number of units available when this drop happens, we would like to recommend that the first priority of filling that would be full-time, hard-to-fill positions. Right, these are ones that we have identified this year as we have done our own hiring as our hard-to-fill positions, and you can see those are credentialed special education teachers, science teachers, and math teachers. Right, those are the last two single subject teachers in our junior high schools. Second priority would be all other full-time employees, and then third priority would be any other category of employees. Just to talk a little bit about what we will, as a governance team, need to talk about this more, but just foreshadowing this, any proceeds that come back from the staff housing, right? The first thing we want to do is to stabilize that staff housing. I spoke earlier during our budget discussion, right? Really looking at the reserves that need to be built and the expenses that they're going to incur as they bring professionals on board to do the auditing, etc. When we get past that, right, when we get past that that lease-up period, these proceeds could reimburse, and probably would be a good idea to reimburse the MVWSD building fund for the costs associated with the staff housing. We put a great deal of effort into this, right, and drawn on our funds for the expertise brought in to solve this problem, legal fees, as well as housing experts. And then once all of that is reimbursed and once the building's leased up, we could look at how to use those funds for things like cushioning the general fund from unexpected infrastructure costs that come up. So that's just a foreshadow. That's for future board discussion. So as we move forward, we really think that project is even better positioned to provide educator and school staff housing at low rents to attract and retain teachers, and it certainly has increased the long-term viability of that project. And really did achieve the success criteria that we laid out together in May of 2025. So with that, those are the recommendations. Just looking for any questions, feedback. We will draft something and give it formally to that governance team. Obviously, Charles can carry it as well, as he represents our district.
Okay, any questions from the board? Trustee Conley?
Briefly, under the prioritization of hard to fill positions, I know things that have been discussed in the past that were very challenging, bus drivers, because we compete with all of the different commercial, Google, VTA, everybody else. And so last year we really struggled with finding a bus driver. I don't know if we're up to capacity yet, or if that might be something to consider.
We are actually fully staffed for bus drivers right now. So that's positive. I think if it becomes a hard to fill position and HR deems it as a hard to fill position, it would be added.
Okay. And then the other issue is language teachers in the past, because we compete again with secondary subject credentialed high school teachers. And so we've had a lot of trouble. I know Mistral, for example, isn't fully bilingual staff. In multiple grade levels, there's an English teacher and a Spanish teacher, and they rotate the kids to be able to meet the dual immersion minutes. I know when we were trying to have middle school languages also, staffing just for Spanish was really challenging in the past.
Okay, can we look at that and then add it if it is?
That would be great, especially given that we're thinking about adding more language courses next year.
Any other questions? Trustee Henry?
Also on the potential of prioritizing units for, and for certain positions, kind of where would I'm on board with it in concept. I'm just trying to think about exactly where this would this be direction of the board, of the direction to the property manager? Would this be documented? Now that we're talking about it out loud, I'm just trying to think about how this actually gets sort of memorialized.
Right, this portion would actually go to the property managers as they start taking in applications.
And this the criteria we're talking about would obviously just apply to MVWSD employees. Foothill, once the deal closes and they're officially a part of it, could potentially have their own prioritization criteria.
Yes, that is true. They will.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll take public comment. We have one speaker online, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson?
Hello? Yes.
Yeah, one thing that about the proceeds, if you eventually get to that point, that could be unexpected is infrastructure cost. One of them, I think, is the underground utilities at several of the school sites that originally were in priority 2. These are still not completely surveyed, I think, and have not been replaced or repaired. These are sewer, natural gas and water lines that are under the ground and some of them were put in the 1950s. The other thing is I definitely agree with Trustee Conley talking about the Spanish language secondary teachers. That's been truly a decade-long problem with retention and hiring. I can remember when I was first a trustee talking with the superintendent of the high school district, Barry Groves, about when is Mountain View Wisman going to offer languages in their middle schools? And we still are not consistently doing that. And it actually is very much of a problem that we could be helping Spanish language speaking students eventually get to satisfying the California state universities and the UC systems requirements for being proficient in a second language other than English. If they become proficient by the end of 8th grade and they can test out of that requirement and essentially not have any language requirements imposed on them on high school. It's not a high school graduation requirement to have Spanish proficiency, but if you can prove Spanish proficiency through a number of tests that UC support or recognizes, you can opt out of that or test out of the foreign language requirement. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Okay, do any of the trustees have any comments?
I love the lowered rents. It is just absolutely phenomenal to be able to make this housing more available to our staff, to get our teachers and our workforce in there. I am fully in favor of it.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that and say that I think certainly lowering rents is important, but I'm reluctant to set a number. I would allow the governing board to do that because I feel that other aspects of this, such as hiring the staff that is needed, making sure the reserves are sound, and I'm confident all of these goals can be accomplished. I just see it somewhat artificial to set a 25% goal, on average. And I let them, do what we've asked them to do.
Well, the thought was we'd give them a target and that they could push it any way they needed.
And I think what the rent reduction, the goal of it is to make sure we have our units comfortably occupied. And that's, whether that's 90% or around there, whatever that is, I think that's the goal of the rent reduction. Trustee Henry?
I will just say that I actually like having at least some kind of number for the new housing board to have an idea of what we have in mind as that 25%. I don't, at least as I read it, this would not be to give them a requirement of what they should be lowered, but I think I at least have a number in mind, and I think as they launch, having some idea of what we were thinking will help them begin their discussions. There will still be a part where they need to come back to us with a budget and things like that. So this wouldn't be us setting it for them. So I'm personally in favor of including this 25% in their recommendations. And I guess it would be also just kind of part of my expectation that early as they are getting set up, that we will hear from them frequently, so that we can kind of fine tune some of the guidance.
Trustee Conley,
I agree with Trustee Henry.
Trustee DeFazio.
I think I'll have plenty of opportunity to weigh in with the rest of the Nonprofit Housing Corporation Board, but I think the recommendations seem pretty reasonable, and it's a good way to kick off, I think, the new board, and ultimately like make this a well-functioning, stable housing development. So,
Any further comments? Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is the governance calendar. Before we asked Superintendent Baird to introduce this, are there any members of the public in person or online who would like to speak on this? Please submit a card or raise your hand. I see one speaker online, and it's Mr. Nelson, and I will put you in the queue to speak after the board asks questions. Okay, Superintendent Baird, governance.
Yes, so the board asked last meeting that we bring forward the governance calendar for review, just so you can see and have a public discussion about what's coming, what we anticipate is coming, and then also be able to edit it as well, right? If there's anything missing or no longer needs to be there. So I will, I guess, open that up for your directing that discussion.
Okay, any questions from the board? Trustee Conley? No? Don't see any questions. In that case, we'll take the online speaker, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson, you may speak.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
You can.
Yeah, to remind you, I've always been a proponent of these board governance calendars since I first heard of them, and a CSBA improving your board oversight. One of the things I think that you guys asked last year was about this digital promise and asking a report on the results rather than just the promise of this. This is how the computers are used, for instance, for iReady. I would be interested in that, and particularly how SED families, how much they're actually using it, how the citizen band situation is really working for these SED kids. I think in families, because they could use it for, I think, getting into Power School. There should be lots of metrics easy to available in the Clearly system, which monitors use. And the other thing is, and other parents have mentioned to me that these reports in past board meetings were said that they were going to be offered, and yet it seems like these reports haven't been done either on a yearly or a half-yearly basis. So there's not really much information on how these systems work. Particularly iReady intern testing. Why are we even paying for the system now, since we're not using the online stuff? The state has a free, completely developed system to support CASPP interim testing. It has complete communities of learning, online instructions for teachers to use it. They have tutorials, all sorts of things that you can get free if you just start using it. So part of this effort that Charles has talked about, maybe we need less testing. Well, also maybe we can save a bunch of money by using the state testing that's provided free to every single district. It's directly tied to the standardized testing. It's part of their standardized testing. And I'll send you the links to that so the board members can start reading about that yourself. But that's one of the things I think farther out. Maybe you should think on you guys deciding where you're going to put it on your calendar. This is your calendar. The superintendent is the secretary to the board. So please exert your governance responsibilities for your own system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Are there any comments from the board? Trustee Conley.
Have a very long list. I see this as an opportunity for us to lay out some of the things that we've characteristically seen come to the board in the past. This governance calendar starts as things that like are hard must-dos at certain times of the year. So it might be that the color code goes in that these are bedrock and they stay a certain color, and then things that can be moved around a little bit as needs be could get filled in areas that are appropriate. But are you ready? You can go back to the recording afterwards, or I can write it down. Things that we've had in the past that I'd love to see, an update on our social emotional learning and mental health processes, and kind of how that's going this year. I know we have added a whole bunch of mental health resources and supports. An update on the Amplify implementation and how that's going. I've been hearing from a lot of teachers about this. An update on our literacy intervention program. We usually get an update on that as well, on how the data did for the literacy intervention program. It might get folded into another data report of some sort. Are we still in disproportionality for anything? And if so, what are we doing? No, we're out, Kathy.
Sorry, we're out of significant disproportionality.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, so strike that from the list. iReady diagnostic reports 2 and 3 usually come back to the board, so those can get scheduled ahead of time. The board did ask for an update on the new after-school provider that's doing that little 1 hour for TK and K. Probably in November or December, I think, is when it was supposed to come back to the board, just as an update on how it's going.
Yes, we have it on an internal planning document. I think it was around February, but we could move it up.
Okay, we don't all get to see the matrix. All the trustees don't get to see it. The president and vice president in the meetings with the superintendent do. So these things may be on the matrix already and I don't know it, but I think that's why we have the governance calendar for the whole board, so we can see where things are going to come. I don't want to just make spurious agenda item recommendations. I'd rather have it fit in where it's useful. An update on our ELAP program. This is the first year that we've expanded to only having the YMCA, which is why I'd like to see an update on it. And then we usually get a presentation about our preschool program, as well as the budgeting around it and decision-making on what kind of hours and classes to offer. A plan for enrollment outreach. I've been hearing, so in the past we've had, it might even be just in the superintendent update, Superintendent Bear, but an update on, were we doing in-person open houses? Are we doing school tours? How is that going? And I'm sure some other trustees have been getting some feedback about how the choice programs are organized. And I think the more that we can help our, well, I don't want to get into discussion, but how are our neighborhood schools doing outreach as well for enrollment? An update on the lottery process for Stevenson and Mistral, and how are we doing on our goals around increasing the economic integration at Stevenson, and do we need to do other things to support that process? And then study sessions or town halls. I think we had talked previously about a study session around this kind of larger screen time in classrooms, digital access, cell phone usage at school, Chromebooks, that type of thing. We wanted to have some sort of study session on. And then I imagine a study session on our strategic plan, or it might be that when we get into harder budget discussions, that's actually a study session instead of, so it's kind of an entire meeting and it allows more conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, so I sort of want to, thinking about that, it's a lot of things I would like to learn more about, okay? However, and including many things you mentioned. I think of the length of our board meetings and how long this will push them forward. I also am concerned about the staff time and preparing for all of these presentations. So I think it's a balance, right? And it's hard to say where that should be, but I am respectful of the staff time, and all I can say is there's a balance, and
I think some of these things can come as written reports when it's in updates, but I think
even with, yeah, okay.
there are some, I mean, it's information that should be available to trustees. There are some things that I think the iReady diagnostics, the conversations where we have to make decisions, like around the Stevenson lottery, around preschool, those are things that we're just gonna have to talk about because we have to make decisions.
Let me just sort of ask a question. Won't some of these sort of naturally come up as we talk about the budget plans going forward?
I was just
Many of
looking
these
at that. There are a number of these that will naturally come up. Yes. So I'll look at them.
Trustee Henry?
Two things that I think we typically get in the spring that I didn't see here, that are the update from the budget committee, sorry, the bond oversight committee and the parcel tax oversight committees. And I seem to remember last year those being kind of separate presentations from the budget presentations. So not adding anything to the plans, just those to me seem to be part of what would be on the governance calendar.
Trustee DeFazio?
Yeah, I think folks touched on a lot of the things that I would like to see on there. I think maybe to your comment, it might help with on the calendar seeing which things are, firm, mandatory, they have to come by and they have to come by on this time and are subject to deadlines, and which things are kind of can float around, and we can kind of work within that and see kind of like our discretionary time budget for this. And then one thing I think that's probably we need to figure out when it's coming, but we were just talking about the staff housing. The staff housing corporation is going to be preparing an annual report for the board, and so that's going to be at a regular cadence that we can figure out when it will land on there.
That's actually makes me think that now that we won't be talking about staff housing anymore, we'll have, right.
We're gonna have just hours that we have to fill,
Yeah.
President Lambert.
What we'll be doing in closed session, right? Any further comments? Okay, great. Thank you. And I guess what I should maybe is to add too is I think all of us come up with things every once in a while. We should just let Superintendent Bear know that they get on our agenda. We all have meetings with them and can fit those in. Okay, well, thank you. Next is item 9F. This is a discussion item, board policy updates, first reading. Before I turn this over to Superintendent Bear and Trustee DeFazio, I'll ask if there's any member of the public wishing to speak on this, either in person or online. I don't see anyone wishing to speak in this. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Bear.
Yeah, so I'll just hand over to Trustee DeFazio.
All right, thanks. So I will talk through. Whoops. These are updates. I'll try to be brief. I know everyone's read all of these, but it's useful, I think, for us as the policy committee reviews these. Next slide, please. This was the batch from last time for our committee report I mentioned, September 17th meeting. Refresher that we get the update. We have previous policies that come through the committee meetings, and we have our staff recommendations for things that need to be looked at. And we have the outputs of just general recommendations for policies and any changes we need to do. Trustee Henry and I serving on the committee. So next slide, please. The current batch, right? So these came through the existing policy and referral. I have 2 slides here for batches. I'll talk through this first. First set is primarily due to a ruling that I mentioned last time, Tennessee v. Cardona, along with some updates to state law. So I've bucketed these together. It covers a wide variety of topics. Next slide, please. And then we had some remaining policies from the batch, plus some that came from staff's regular review of the policies that need updates. Next slide, please. So for each of these, I'll give kind of a quick highlight of what the policy is about, and then kind of avoid repeating myself on the updates that we're doing, because some of them are spread across. One of the great things about having the policy committee is that we do get to take an overview of the existing policies we have, review them, and kind of internalize them. And I think spreading that knowledge here is pretty useful. So, you know, first off is uniform complaint procedures. We've all seen this probably in a lot of things. It's how we investigate and resolve complaints about non-compliance with state and federal law, potentially. That governs specifically educational programs, covers issues like discrimination, harassment, student accommodations, instructional materials, and other specific things. We're responsible for ensuring the compliance, and some issues are excluded from the uniform complaint procedures. So they're handled through different procedures, which is where our updates around Title IX come into play. Our policy will outline the formal process and kind of states that complainants are protected from retaliation, and confidentiality will be maintained according to the law through the investigation. As I mentioned earlier, this update modifies the complaints that are covered by Title IX per Tennessee v. Cardona, and it updates our language according to recent state law that prohibits discrimination. That state law that prohibited discrimination includes combinations of multiple characteristics. Next slide, please. Non-discrimination in employment. So our existing policy highlights our commitment to preventing unlawful discrimination that affects employees, applicants, interns, volunteers, contractors, and it highlights the formal complaint procedure for this. The update again includes Title IX, SB 1137, which is the multiple characteristics, and then there's a change in state law, SB 1100, which limits requirements for a driver's license under certain circumstances. So the details are in the policy, but it's basically making it more less of a requirement on having a driver's license unless it's absolutely needed for the job. Next slide, please. So I can go through these 2 together because they're both related to sexual harassment policies for employees here and then students in the next one. Doesn't diminish our dedication to safe environments, but we can kind of discuss the unifying bit here and go more efficiently. So we're generally committed to harassment-free work in school environments, which includes students and employees, such as interns, volunteers, contractors, and applicants, and this is in alignment with state and federal law. Retaliation is prohibited, and our policy for students includes training and age-appropriate education, and that all complaints will be promptly and thoroughly investigated. Now, married, pregnant, or parenting students, the existing policy guarantees that they will not be excluded from educational programs based on actual or potential marital, pregnancy, or parenting status. We want to minimize our education interruptions and avoid dropout risks, so we provide services and support, which are outlined. There are specific rights for excused absences for a student to take care of their sick child. We annually notify students and parents of these rights. And then the update is affected by the Title IX ruling, and we have more explicit highlighting of the educational and related support services that we provide. Next slide, please. Interdistrict attendance. So this was an annual review by staff. We didn't have any changes for this one, but we kind of regularly check these. This establishes our pathways for students to attend schools outside the district. We have 2 primary mechanisms: interdistrict attendance agreements, which we're allowed to sign for up to 5 years, and they're subject to approval from both districts. Instructional collaboration agreements, which are targeted around disruptions to certain programs or teacher shortages in those areas that they're highlighted. And then in some cases, when we sign these agreements, it'll provide transportation, the district. Next slide. So conduct. So this was one that we brought up to regular. I think the last update was 2019 2019, I think, for this. This existing safe, positive, disruption-free learning environment for all our students. We expect appropriate behavior on school grounds, during school activities, and on district transportation. There's prohibited conduct, including endangering others, bullying, harassment, and classroom disruptions, and then disciplinary action for violations, which can include loss of privileges, referral to counseling services, etc. And the major addition here just refines the language that's specific to device usage, which brings it closer to 2025. It's around cell phones rather than, I think, pagers and things like that. So next slide, please. Athletic competition. So athletics, part of our education that fosters physical, social, and emotional development. It's part of the whole child, and we want to support that, right? So we're free from discrimination and provide equivalent opportunities for our students. Health and safety is prioritized, including protective equipment and emergency action plans. The update in this is AB 3074, which enhances the prohibition against racially derogatory athletic team names. Don't believe that's an issue for us, but it's worth to have as the sense of the board in our policy. And then finally, state academic achievement tests. This was last updated in 2012, and we finally have an update that basically just primarily brings this up to date with the current testing regime. So CASP, we administer our state mandated academic assessments. We encourage high participation, not only to reach our requirements, but because it's an important part of our continuous improvement to identify progress, achievements, and areas for improvement for students and for staff. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Don't see any. We have no speakers. Do I have comments from the board?
Thank you to the committee. We look forward to these coming back for a vote at a future date.
Thank you. Trustee Conley, Trustee Henry, thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to board updates. Do we have any updates from the board? Trustee Conley?
Oh, Trustee Reed was about to.
Okay.
I attended a workshop on learning through brain development. It was hosted by a neuroscientist that talked about how brain development occurs in students and how it has changed in students in post-COVID times. And it was really enlightening to kind of hear and see the brain scans and hear about how different techniques affect the growth of certain portions of the brain in different ways, and how our teaching practices lend to better brain growth or development, and things like techniques for not just receiving information, but other techniques for recalling information, or long-term memory versus short-term. So it was a great session to be able to really think about how a child can learn and things that can be done within their environment to help them receive and access information better.
Trustee Conley?
I attended the California School Boards Association's Board of Directors meeting over the weekend. I apologize to all of the staff who got many emails from me when I was sitting alone by myself in a hotel room. I cleaned out my inbox. Now you know, just expect it whenever I go to those meetings. You're gonna get, everything's gonna get ticked off. But it was an interesting weekend. Some things I can talk about, some things I can't, but I do have the update that I can share with delegates, and I will actually forward that to the board. So you're welcome to review it. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to items for future agendas. Does anyone have any items for future agendas? Don't see any. Move on to future board meeting dates. We have regular meetings on October 16th, November 6th, and November 20th. And the governance calendar is posted. And any final comments, questions from the board? With that, we will close the meeting at 9:47.